In preparing for this assignment, you realize things aren't always what they seem. For example, I'm a technician who enjoys doing Linux and Windows and all like that, but sometimes you have a few things that go on. For example, my project that I'm doing now, I have uh, Linux running under iTunes. And my biggest problem is how do I make that happen effectively? And in some cases, you don't really want to clown around with this stuff. You don't want to ruin your boxes. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a nice, quick little guide to installing iTunes up to version 10 on a Linux box. Keep on. We'll first start by logging into our Linux box. Once we have it logged in, our first step that's going to happen is we're going to go and download the necessary file, which is going to be the iTunes 7.2 file. We're getting this file because it's going to be our easiest step to take in order to get from one area to another area. Once 7.2 is fully installed, then we will go back and from the iTunes application, we will upload the latest version of iTunes, which right now is 10. So we'll let that happen and we will come back to that in a minute. Now that we have iTunes 7.2 downloaded, we will do a little house cleaning on the Linux box. We will type in sudo apt-get install Ubuntu restrictive extras. And what's going to happen here, these extras are going to allow us to get uh, settings that will let our iPod be recognized and be able to sync both with all of our normal arrangements that we normally would see under a standard iTunes setup. So we'll go ahead and let that keep on going and it will run, and it's quite a few files, so it may take a few minutes, but in the meantime we're going to skip forward to the next section where we're pretty much done with the process. Now that we have that process complete, we will go ahead and start our program launching of the iTunes exe file. When we do this, we'll use the Wine program launcher. This avoids us from having to do any extra steps like making it into an executable file like we would do on a lot of other Windows related programs. So once we have this going, we will then go into our normal steps into receiving the screens as if we were getting ready to go ahead and launch this normally under Windows. As this starts launching, you will notice a few screens come up and flash in and out. You can quickly read through them, but they're just there for additional information. All right, I will come back after we start the launch. Now we have the iTunes launch screen. This will be a kind of standard install from this point on. And we have to accept the license agreements and the specialized settings that we would like. And then after that, it's just a very straightforward process. So I'll be back again after this part is complete. Now that the installation is complete, we will choose the new iTunes from our wine selection um, inside of our program options. Once we choose it from the program area, we will then be able to see a full screen of iTunes coming up and running. So this will be standard just like any of your other installation types. And it's nothing new. It takes a little minute to come up. Then after that, it's all the same stuff that you've always done, and that is choosing your default programs and all like that and how you want it to run. All right, I'll be back with you in a few seconds. Now we're starting to open up iTunes, and We're gonna go ahead and let it run a few little features on its own, a few little auto features, but then we're gonna go straight into upgrading to iTunes version 10. We're going to do this because this will give us our most comfortable environment, and at this point we can then have the feel that we normally have on a daily basis. The process for downloading and upgrading to iTunes 10 is pretty standard from what you normally would do. And so we're just going to go through, download the file, and I'll get back with you as soon as we have everything and we're ready to start with the second part of the portion of the upgrade. Unlike the iTunes 7.2 file, I found that the iTunes 10 executable has to be used with the change mod command to make it executable, and then that we can go ahead and then run the Wine program launcher after we make an executable. So how we're going to do that, we're going to open up a terminal session and we're going to use the change mod command, and I have all of this information at the very end of the lesson, and at that point you can just take your time and freeze frame it, and you'll be able to copy it, all the information that you need. So I will be back with you after this is complete. Now that it's finished, we can go ahead and launch the executable with the program Wine program launcher, and just go through the regular steps of installing iTunes. So just follow your prompts and pick your special selections. All right, I will talk to you in a minute. We have now finished the iTunes upgrade to iTunes 10. And at this point, we're going to do the same thing that we did before, and that is we're going to now launch iTunes and get the information that we want and start our regular syncing and all the other stuff. So at this point, we're going to go through the same process of going to Wine to Programs in iTunes and then selecting iTunes, and we'll start our own little regular standard setups. Once we finish with these standard setups, ensuring things like we have our CD mounted and everything else, we then are able to use iTunes just as we regularly normally would. So pretty much the rest of this portion of the video is just going to be going through to show you that this did in fact work, and that I was able to connect not only to my iTunes account, but connect I had iPad, I also had an iPod and an iTouch, and all of those worked perfectly. So that would be the end of this section of it. I just have a few little more notes at the very end, and I have a couple of postings of the information where you can go and pause it and go to those links um, to get further information. All right, have a great one.